Hi, I'm Michael Zakkour, the founder of 5 New Digital and a managing director at Sellside Group, and you're listening to the CPG Guys.
Welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. Your hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of the CPG Guys. This is part 2 in a 2-part series with a very special guest. I'm of course Sri, co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys, co-founder and partner of Think Blue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter Ria Raj's music, www.riaraj.com, that's R-H-E-A-R-A-J, and my younger daughter Laura Raj, as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group, Cat's Eye, who have just completed the tour of the Jingle Ball series, and we are off to Tokyo and Sydney for performances. Apple Music Awards in the way. Touch, the hit single, is now past 200 million plays on Spotify. And joining me today is my fellow co-founder, Mr. Peter V.S. Bond. And when he's not co-hosting his podcast, he serves as head of client engagement at Flywheel, the e-com acceleration division of Omnicom. Peter, pleasure doing this with you episode over episode. How you doing today? Where are you? What's the plan for the holidays?
Well, I'm in Connecticut getting ready for Christmas with the daughter and then up to Canada to see the mother for a couple of days. But meanwhile, what I have been doing surreptitiously, Sri, I've been plotting a hostile takeover of the Raj family media empire. I may have to hip check you out of that chair and take over control of the business holdings for Laura and Ria. That's getting too big, man. I think it should be me in charge over there. What do you think?
The numbers are growing by the day. When we're talking hundreds of billions, yeah, you're right. But I just got a new chair, so I'm happy to give you the old one. In fact, I was about to, after the recording of this episode, I was able to call bulk pickup. You've saved me the trouble.
There you go.
LA, we have to do bulk pickup because here in California, you can't dispose of anything without process and bureaucracy. But otherwise, all good. You ready for the holidays?
Everything has been shopped, wrapped, waiting for Santa to arrive. As you can see, his little helper made an appearance on my microphone this morning. For those of you watching on video by chance, I am joined by the elf on a shelf, Miss Frazzle. Very exciting day here in Connecticut.
We had the most interesting conversation on presents because this year there's no presents under the tree.
Nothing.
Because they asked me, where the heck are our presents? And I said, I'm taking you to Tokyo, at least for 3 of you that are not performing, myself included. I'm buying you tickets to Tokyo, to Sydney. Labels aren't paying for it. It's my money. Our money.
Sri, are you going to take him to Disneyland like I took Nadia, or what's the deal here? Is that going to work out?
Tokyo?
Yeah, I think you should. I think you should check it out. I think they'll love you forever, Sri. What daughter doesn't want her daddy to take her to Disneyland?
I could not agree more, right? And that perennial lasts forever, stands the test of time. But before we get to our guests, we want to ask you to consider following us in your preferred listening app. If you already don't do so, this will ensure you'll automatically receive new episodes as they're released. And while you're at it, follow our sister podcasts, the FMCG Guys and CPG Scoop, who are both highly rated on Chartable, just like the CPG Guys. And now, announcing. We got to stop saying announcing because we've already announced it. The first retail media executive education program in our industry from May 5th to the 8th, 2025 at Cornell Tech, all the way in New York City. The CPG Guys are strategic partners with Cornell University for this immersive 4-day program that brings together industry thought leaders and renowned faculty to share best practices for building compelling retail media platforms. You will discover how to collaborate in creating best-in-class tech stacks, measure performance to ensure brands access the necessary KPIs based on campaign objectives, and establish strong partnerships between brands and retailers. In addition, the program will cover optimizing brand strategies using AI-driven campaign design at scale to achieve marketing goals. Links to our podcast, Sistercast, social media profiles of my daughters Ria and Laura. For more information on the Cornell Retail Media Program, you can find it easily by scrolling over to the digital liner notes of this episode.
Hey, Sri, I would be remiss if I didn't say to our audience, if you are a CMO or you are a head of media at a big brand, a challenger brand, you want to be in this room. All the big RMNs are going to be there. Everyone in this ecosystem is going to be. This is not a hands-on keyboard kind of certification. This is a big picture strategy, how to invest, how to build, how to measure. This is a huge, huge event. And if you're not in that room, you're going to kick yourself when you find out who's in that room. The seats are going quickly, and you got to be there. New York, May 5th to the 8th. It's a big deal.
And Peter, I'll kind of repeat, the same rule applies to RMNs as well. While we have the largest ones in the room and we can only accommodate so many, you probably want to get to know, if you're an RMN provider, what this is about. Because yes, Peter, you said the keyword. This is about investments, the value, the future, and where we are in 2025. So this is episode 2 of a 2-part series. Episode 1 was released a few days ago. This is our New Year's special episode. I always enjoy talking to our guest because I always learn every time he comes on the show, and he's just a walking, talking basket of knowledge in omnichannel consumerism. So on this episode, for episode 2, we have a repeat guest from 3 years ago. I don't know why it's taken 3 years to get him back. I can't explain that one. That's about the only thing I can't really explain on this episode. And over the years, I've followed closely, waited for insights, analytics, thought leadership with expertise in digital commerce and e-com, immersive commerce, digital transformation, new retail, data science, China APAC market, consumer e-commerce, unified commerce, new retail strategy, global business expansion, a lot of which we covered in part 1. This part 2 will focus largely on the Far East, TikTok, and upcoming trends, including, of course, no conversation with a leader in this space ends without AI.
Shri, what I hear you saying is that when it comes to knowledge, our guest today, he's full of it.
Isn't he on a TV show as well?
I think if you're tuning in to CNBC on the 27th of December, you might see our guest make an appearance talking about these topics.
All you got to do is simply go to Google or simply come back here on the CPG Guys, because you're going to find his.
We're going to put a link to his appearance in the digital liner notes of this episode.
So make sure to stay in touch. He's also author of Wiley Books' Amazon #1 bestseller, China's Super Consumers and the New Retail, provided strategy, research, execution, services for global brands, retailers, CPG, and manufacturers on retail evolution. He's, of course, a guest lecturer at Yale, UPenn, NYU, Kellogg, Columbia, BWG, Ecom Advisors conferences, and the China Institute, and others. We noted last time we need to get him into Cornell. That's the only missing Ivy League we have. Mike Zakkour, thank you for doing this. Few days before the New Year's and the holiday season, we are deeply thankful that you chose to come back. How you doing, man? Welcome back.
Hey guys, great to see you again. I'm doing wonderfully, and I just want to say to you and everybody listening, I wish you all a happy holiday season full of health, happiness, and prosperity, and peace on earth. Peter, when you said my guest is full of knowledge, I wasn't sure if you meant full or full in quotes there. I got a little nervous, so we can clear that up another time.
Absolutely, Michael. Shree's a straight man. I'm the comedy, right? I throw those in, but in all seriousness, we're really grateful to have you here. Your depth of knowledge is unrivaled, at least as far as Shree and I are concerned, and we're very excited to have you here talking to us about how retail is continually transforming and what's on the horizon. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good. I wasn't sure if I was in on the joke or the butt of it, but I think we're good for now.
I have no idea, for the record, what these two gentlemen are talking as a joke. But Mike, before we get into conversation here, give us a quick overview of what 5 New Digital is.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep it short. I mean, basically, I've built a commercial ecosystem for myself. As you guys know, I'm a big advocate of ecosystems. 5 New Digital sits at the top of the pyramid. Sometimes it's hard for me to explain. We're a company that is more of a philosophy that turned into a business opportunity. And the philosophy revolves around the name of the company, 5 New Digital, meaning the basics of how people have done business and companies have done business for 100 years are still there, but they've been completely transformed by technology, IT, data, and digital applications across the enterprise. So, the new consumption, the new retail, the new technology, the new supply chain, and the new media. And we work with global brands, retailers, CPGs, manufacturers, and tech companies to leverage and grow and enable them to thrive in that enterprise world that is largely based on those transformations. And as well, I think we talked about a little bit in the first episode. I'm also a managing director at an M&A advisory firm called Sell-Side Group, where I sit on the consumer products and services desk as well as the technology desk. I spent 30 years of my career at the intersection of technology, commerce, consumers, and retail. And also recently, I assumed the position of head of North American and European investments for Tompkins Ventures, an investment group. And so I'm very lucky because inside of that triangle, I'm looking at every company, every opportunity, every news item, not through one lens, but through three lenses, excuse me. What does that mean from how can this company grow and thrive? How does M&A and PE and VC fit in? How does funding fit in? And, so I'm talking to, probably 150 brands, retailers, CPGs, PE firms, investors, VCs every month, which I think gives me a little bit of a unique perspective.
How awesome. Thank you for that overview. In the digital liner notes of this episode, we'll of course include links to your profile, of course, 5 New Digital's website, as well as LinkedIn profile while we go on with our conversation.
I also have to correct Peter. Peter cleared up the full thing. One other thing, I'll be on CNBC December 26th.
The 26th. We will include the link to that appearance in the digital liner notes of this episode. Perfect.
Okay. Just wanted to clear that up. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So last episode, the episode 1 of 2, we talked a lot about the year 2024 for omnichannel consumerism and, a little bit about retail media, things that are plaguing our industry, things that have a lot of tailwind. I'd like to start this episode with something that's on the mind of Gen Z and a lot of those who actually are running a TikTok shop, and I've given away the plot here. TikTok. TikTok, the clock is ticking. I know Peter likes me trying to be funny every now and then. How'd you like that one? The clock is ticking. What is the effect of TikTok being non-accessible in the US? I know with a VPN, this is not going to matter, but India tried this and everybody in India has a VPN and they use TikTok. And India, other than maybe China, is solely responsible for the growth of TikTok, just as the US is. But what's your opinion? What's going on? Is there going to be a huge impact? Are we going to see businesses shut down? Is there a political implication? What's on your mind?
Is this like one of the, default on the debt situations where we're going to come down to the last minute and someone's going to save it and everybody will still be scrolling their TikTok feed the next day? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. And so I just want to make sure we're using the word potential disappearance and shutdown because we're not there. And then let's deal with what are the potential implications of a shutdown. But by first putting in context what TikTok is doing now, what it means to consumption, consumers, creators. I'd have to start with what we've seen, which I've been advocating for a long time, is the evolution of e-commerce into immersive commerce. And the bedrock of immersive commerce is video commerce, right? 85% of everything that's consumed on the internet is video. So all those banner ads, all those websites, all those static PDBs, all those articles, et cetera, account for 15% of online consumption, right? So it took the U.S. several years longer than China and other Asian countries to realize go to video because that's where people consume, right? And so this whole idea around video commerce is, in what ways can you use video to create an integrated effect of traffic, conversions, AOV, and LTV with a lower cost of acquisition, a lower cost of supply chain, and a lower rate of returns, right? It's a proven, this is not theoretical anymore. I have the numbers, I have the documentation. It does all of those things. So some combination of live streaming, commerce, shoppable video, shoppable ads, all that, right? And so who emerged in the middle of this was the rise of TikTok and TikTok Shop. This should come as no surprise because the parent company, ByteDance, has turned, TikTok commerce in China into a $700 billion industry and a significant chunk of the overall retail pie in China, right? And I can't tell you guys, we've talked about this offline and maybe even 3 years ago. If I had $1 million for every time I said this is coming to the West, and people told me no, it won't because it only works in Asia because we're different here, I'd be retired by now and probably not talking to you guys. I'd be in Tuscany in a villa growing my grapes and making wine, right? So they told me QR codes would never work in the West, and they told me the new retail model wouldn't work in the West, and they told me unified commerce wouldn't work in the West, and et cetera, et cetera. And then they told us live commerce, v-commerce wouldn't work in the West, right? On Black Friday alone, TikTok shops realized $100 million in 24 hours of sales. Okay, so we know v-commerce works globally, and it's picking up steam here. There's been a lot of back and forth about mostly the political implications of a China-based company, except it's not. They're based in Singapore, operating in the U.S. with the concerns about data.
I want to make that very clear to our audience because a lot of rhetoric they see on TikTok of clips about where they're based out of, it's actually Singaporean.
Right. And unfortunately, we had to witness the sad spectacle about 5 months ago. The CEO of TikTok went in front of a congressional hearing. I don't know if you guys have seen the clip or the audience has, but you could just Google, TikTok CEO, Congress, and he was continually asked where he was from, and he kept saying Singapore. And where is the company headquartered? Singapore. And then continue to ask, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party? And he said, Congressman, I am a born citizen of Singapore. I am not a Chinese citizen or a member of the Chinese Communist Party.
I'm not going to make fun of anybody, but there were portions where I watched all those clips, including the hearing, as much as was revealed publicly. And I got to tell you, it made me feel I'm not taking pot shots, not to be interpreted that way. Many of our lawmakers do not understand that Singapore and China are not the same country.
Yeah, or that there are maybe 30 countries in East Asia and South Asia to begin with, right? Anyway, so what does all this mean? There's a new administration coming in, and the head of that administration has vacillated between, I will make sure TikTok goes away, and I will ensure that TikTok has a long and prosperous life in the U.S., right? And so the most bipartisan subject in Washington today is China, China-related companies and that rivalry between the U.S. and China. It's the only damn thing they can agree on, and it's all negative, right? So we have to wait and see. All the indicators are right now that the demand for ByteDance to divest itself of TikTok to a U.S.-owned company, that's up in the air. The indicators are right now that that's not going to happen, which was a very different answer from 5 months ago. Okay, so let's get the geopolitics out of the way, and let's talk about, if you don't mind, the importance of TikTok in this video commerce, immersive commerce economy. There's a misconception that the vast majority of creators and consumers of TikTok content are somewhere between 13 and 24 years old. And it's just not true anymore, right? We have corporations creating content, major corporations. We have major companies selling product. It is now ticked into the channel calendar, channel optimization, and a big part of most brands and retailers' attempt to find that right product channel demo fit. And it works. And the bigger issue here, guys, is it's further proof that that linear top to bottom, side to side consumer journey, quote unquote, funnel is relevant in some ways, but a lot less in other ways, right? When you can go from, I've seen this product for the first time, to hitting the buy button in 3 minutes, tell me what that consumer journey looks like from a funnel point of view.
Mike, for the benefit of our audience, if you can take a second for those of them not following but only catching the rhetoric, what is the gripe here? Why ban it in the first place?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm remiss for not mentioning that. The gripe is that the Chinese government is collecting data and information on the 200 million people in the U.S. who use TikTok and will turn around and use it for nefarious purposes.
To be transparent, though, with the number of users we have of Shein, Temu, Wish those based out of the UK, so I'll take it out. There's already probably 100 million users buying stuff.
There are, but I would argue, Shri, that in those cases we're doing very transactional commerce, and there is some information they're getting on what we're buying, but TikTok is, as Michael's been making reference to, a very immersive experience, and there's a lot of contextual content that's being consumed, and that's why people are up in arms over this, because of the number of hours that Americans are spending scrolling through the feed. They think that, you know, they get paranoid about this, and they are concerned about the consumption and the influence.
Why don't we build something in the US that's equally immersive? TikTok obviously was a cultural phenomenon that came up with these short form reels. I know the Meta platform has it now. Instagram Reels, YouTube has Reels, everybody's got Reels. TikTok came here first, still immersive, still the best set of capabilities. Arguing that is silly. But Mike, I want to ask you a question about Gen Z. You talked about companies using TikTok, right? D2C brands using TikTok. But many Gen Z have created their entire livelihood out of TikTok, being influencers. They're not selling anything.
The influencer economy.
Are we in a position to take away the livelihood of a few million people like that with a ban? Like literally, wouldn't it collapse the next morning? Because I compare the followership on Instagram versus TikTok, and they're night and day. TikTok having a much larger audience base for influencers.
So I think we can get some understanding of the directional implications by looking at Argentina. Mielo, who was elected the new president of the country, had a famous online argument with Elon Musk, and basically Argentina wanted to shut down Twitter in the country, and they did. And thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people's lives were affected because they were using Twitter as a business engine, as a community building engine, And I think that's in the process of being worked out. But just if you now 10x or 20x that effect with a Twitter shutdown in the US, and Sri, I go back to it, it's not just Gen Z. There are tons of middle American moms and dads who are making a ton of money. And so the other thing, though, I would say as a business person, I wouldn't encourage any creator to be over leveraged in any one channel. So yes, they can make their main name maybe initially in TikTok, but they got to think like a business and say, now, how do I extend this to YouTube? How do I extend this to Instagram? How do I extend this to Meta? Just to nobody likes to be over leveraged in anything. But yes, it'll have a huge effect. And it might produce, a Occupy Wall Street level of protests if this actually went through.
And so, Mike, I know it's strategic importance now because, drum roll, please, Peter. Last week, both my daughters, who of course are in the hundreds of thousands and million follower ranges, millions of downloads on Spotify for the work they do, they said to me, Dad, I finally understand what Peter and you do. You guys are retail and brand influencers. And I said, oh my God, retribution. It only took 4 years, 450 episodes, Peter, but hearing it.
Do they finally respect us now, Shri? Is that what you're telling me?
So let me turn it over to Peter for the next one because we got an interesting, juicy one.
Yeah, so before I do, I'm going to throw one stat out at us. In 2024, JD was displaced as the fifth largest global marketplace. And who are they displaced by? Wait for it. ByteDance. That talks to you about the importance of TikTok in terms of driving commerce. By the end of the decade, they expect that over 46% of TikTok users will conduct in at least one commerce transaction on TikTok during a calendar year. All right, so let's talk about.
I want to add to that, by the way.
Yeah.
You have to throw Pinduoduo into the mix, the parent company of Temu.
They're in the top 5.
Most of our users may not know who Pinduoduo is unless you work in China. Odds are they don't know that they are the owners or the parent company of Temu. Can you take a second and just explain who they are?
So Pinduoduo is a company that was founded roughly 8 years ago. And why they were so revolutionary is they were the first company in the world to build a commerce social company, which is very different than a social commerce company. And so what they did was they said, our focus is commerce, and how do we leverage every tool in our box to use social to move commerce, right? The West's attempts at social commerce have largely amounted to trying to shove in against its will commerce into social platforms that were not built for commerce. And they took the complete opposite view. And basically, over the course of 5 years, they went from 0% market share of commerce in China to roughly 12 to 15%. And so what's happened is ByteDance and PDD knocked Alibaba and JD badly, because as recently as 6 years ago, those two companies accounted for roughly 90% of all e-commerce transactions in China. And fast forward today, their combined share is about 60 to 65%. So these two companies took the two behemoths in the industry, and they didn't need to file antitrust suits. They just did it better. And so PDD exported their model, Temu, to the rest of the world, and ByteDance exported their model, TikTok, to the rest of the world.
All right. Thank you for that history lesson. That was very useful, Michael. Our guests oftentimes don't understand the landscape outside of the United States. So it's always good to give them a refresher. I'll just let people know for the purpose of this that the top 5, because it's going to come to me anyhow. It's basically right now Alibaba, it's Pinduoduo, Amazon, and now ByteDance, and Walmart is just off the list at 6 or 7 with JD right there. So let's talk about M&A, Michael, because I think there's a lot going on right now. Obviously, on the retail side, the dissolution of the planned Kroger and Albertsons merger, but in the wake of that, suddenly we see Mars' announcement that they want to acquire the Hershey's company, and that to some degree is probably a reaction to Mondelez's acquisition of the Hershey company, and that is a reaction to Mars' acquisition or imminent acquisition of Kellanova. So what's going on? Is M&A the way that we're going to see growth going forward, or are these just kind of exceptions to what's going on? Is growth going to be driven more by new commerce channels and less by just acquisition? What are your thoughts?
I think, Peter, we have to separate that question into two answer categories, right? There's what is the M&A landscape for CPG, FMCG, and what is the M&A landscape for consumer products, services, and related technologies, right? They're two different stories there, and they're both equally important, and obviously they both have an interplay. So when we look at, the examples you've just cited, those are the examples of mega mergers, multi-billion, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 billion acquisitions. And obviously they get the deserved column space in the Wall Street Journal and on CNBC and the New York Times, et cetera, right? Those are the type of deals that are potentially industry changing and certainly draw the attention of the SEC and regulators and Congress, as well as, potential activist investors, right? Those are much rarer and fewer and far between than what's really happening from the rest of the CPG, FMCG world. What we're seeing in the last half of 2024, and we're going to see into 2025, is, to me, the real headline is that CPG companies are going to do a massive shedding of non-core, non-strategic brands. And correspondingly, they're going to do a massive wave of acquisitions of what they believe to be core and strategic brands.
That's a pretty profound statement, because what you said is massive shredding of non-strategic brands. I'm assuming that's a response to the inflationary world we live in today.
I think, Sri, it's partially, that's part of the answer. But I also think that, and you guys know, full disclosure, I've worked for and on behalf of, many of the top CPG, FMCG companies, and I think I have a little bit of a good perspective from their side, was as they went from dipping a toe into putting a whole leg or half a body into digital transformation and reorganization for the world as it is, not as it was or they wished it to be, that changed the calculus of what brands were core and strategic.
And Michael, do you see this as being brands that they're shedding will be brands that they probably acquired through other M&A, or is it innovation that really never scaled? Like, what is the common element that you think is going to allow them to divest these portfolio companies that just don't match with everything else they're doing?
Okay, so I did this once in the previous episode. I promise I only do it once in this episode. I get one of these per episode. I would turn the question back around to you guys and say, how do most major CPG, FMCG companies grow? Is it organic or inorganic?
They started with one big brand, but then they start, it's like, look at Coca-Cola. They acquired Glasso, which gave them vitamin water and smart water, and then they acquired Body Armor, and they acquired Honest Tea, and that's how they grew their core business, but most of the other brands were through acquisition or venture.
Right. They grew, listen, the idea is once you, buy a brand, then to use your scale and your money and, your brilliant minds to scale what you've bought. Right. But for the most part, most companies, grow through that acquisition followed by the scaling process. Right. So it's more now, I think, what looked like a smart buy 5, 4, 3, 8 years ago doesn't quite jive with the way the integration of online and offline is developed, with how D2C is developed within CPG. And so, these companies are, to their credit, they're trying to quickly adjust to the world as it is, not as they wish it would be or was. And all of a sudden, something that looked like a good acquisition 4 years ago turns out to be a dud, right? And that doesn't mean these are bad brands that don't have a lot of potential. It just means they're better operated by somebody else.
What I hear you saying is companies like Edgewell and B&G Foods are going to find some really good fire sales on these brands that are going to be cast aside by the big players, which is how those companies have built their existence. They are essentially amalgams of, I like to call them the island of misfit toys. They get all these brands that have been cast aside, and they get really great deals that are too good to walk away from.
Yeah, and there are a multitude of PE firms, family offices, and smaller to mid-sized CPG firms who want to jump at the chance to take those brands on. The only mild complication, and I don't know if it's a serious one yet, I need to do more analysis, is a lot of the CPG and FMCG companies are grappling with whether to sell these brands off on a one-by-one basis or to put them together in a package to the acquirers.
That sounds like a credit default swap to me. What do you think, Michael?
Peter, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not sure it's of a good or bad analogy because I don't really understand it.
Well, yeah. In any event, another shot at my attempted humor, maybe missing the mark a little bit.
Okay, we'll just go back to, Michael is full of knowledge. I got it. No problem. No, I mean, I think I know, what you're trying to say, but it's they're trying to say what's the best valuation we can get, right? And what is the critical mass of potential acquirers? And right, so when you're working in the M&A world, across any category or vertical, your thesis, depends on a few key pillars, which is from a buyer, sell side, buy side perspective. The first thing you have to determine is there a critical mass of companies in your thesis, in your category, who are in the business? And then there is a critical mass within that critical mass who are making money doing it. And then you go to the other side and you say, is there a critical mass of potential investors and buyers? And you amalgamate the opportunities with PE, family offices, strategics, and individual sponsors, right? And if you answer those two questions, then you've got the basis for a thesis, right? And so I've run that model at least 5 times over the last 6 months. And that model tells me there is a critical mass of sellers, a critical mass of buyers, and a critical mass of companies who are in it and actually making some money, but don't quite fit. Yes. Are there some misfit toys thrown in there? Yes. And that's where the how to package it comes together.
All right, Mike. So here's what we're going to do. So I'd love to learn what trends. We'll get to AI separately, so I'll ask you to refrain from AI on this one. But we look into the Far East and commerce there, China, Korea, Japan, leading countries from which digital savviness as well as digital maturity takes place. What trends are you learning and following in Unify? Is it unified commerce? What does that mean? And what are you picking up? Because every time my kids go to Japan and come back, they're like, Japan is living in the 2050s, we live in the 1900s.
Slight exaggeration, but I know what they're saying. I feel what they're saying there. The issue is you have to separate what you feel and experience on the surface and what's underneath and underlying it, right? So, it's very easy to go to Shanghai anytime over the last 20 years, or Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, or Seoul. And yes, there's some very obvious ways in which they're living in the future and we're struggling with the present and the past. Now, some of that, to be fair, has to do with we did it first, right? And so when you go back to the late 19th century, hi Nadia. When you go back to the late 19th century and the early 20th century and the Gilded Age and then the post-World War II, we're the ones who had the blank slate, right? So we were building the marvels of the world, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Lincoln Tunnel, the interstate highway system, physics, nuclear, right? We had the blank slate. Well, by the time you reached the late 20th century and early 21st century, we had the legacy, right? And if you think about it, here's the analogy. You build a tent, and for the first period you're living in the tent, it keeps out the rain, it keeps out the wind, it keeps out the mud, and you're very comfortable, right? And then as that tent ages, now I'm starting to get some leaks from underneath, and oops, there's a couple holes and the wind is blowing in, and the tent's not quite what it used to be. And then as you get closer and closer to the present day, the tent eventually collapses and has to be replaced, right? And in most of these Asian cities and countries, they started building their tent 20 years ago. We started putting our tents up 140 years ago, right? And so, here's the perfect analogy of that. I've often been asked over the years, why was China so far and remains far ahead of us in the West in the development of commerce technologies, e-commerce, the new retail model, unified commerce? They're asking, what is it they had that we don't? Access to the greatest minds in the world, a magnet for the greatest minds in the world, the greatest universities in the world. How the hell did they pull that off? And the answer is simple. It's not what they had, it's what they didn't have that was their advantage.
Mike, I've seen that in India myself. India did not have cell phones till maybe 18, 20 years ago. When they did, they skipped a whole bunch of bandwidths. And now you can literally pay for street food everywhere in India with a cell phone, right? With digital payments. Here, we still struggle to accept digital payments for the most part. People actually ask you for cash if they don't want to take a credit card.
Okay, you stole my thunder, damn it. But the Indian example is a perfect analogy to China 20, 21 years ago. They did not have a modern banking system. They did not have a modern telecommunication system. And most importantly, they did not have a modern retail infrastructure. So all of a sudden, the perfect storm came along, which was e-commerce, right? An entirely new way to have a modern. And by the way, that e-commerce is what forced the modernization of the physical retail infrastructure in China. And then came the cell phones because there was no legacy PC or landline phone. And then people, I mean, when I first moved to China in 2002, people who could afford a new car literally until 2010 would bring a duffel bag of cash to the dealership and drop it on the desk and drive off with a new car, right? And fast forward to 2021, Alibaba is selling new cars online. And by the way, Amazon Auto just got introduced. You guys heard that news? Is that the new front in the Walmart versus Amazon war? Alibaba did it 7 years ago.
It's old news. You know what? It amazes me. The other example that always comes to mind, Michael, here in the United States, what's one of the primary methods of communicating medical records in the United States to this day? It's a fax machine. It's a fax machine. Can you believe that we are still tethered to that archaic methodology? Why? Because we have all this baggage that we're still attached to, that our legal system is predicated upon that being the authorized method for communicating. It is abhorrent. And I think what you're telling me is, we've got a lot of baggage and China doesn't. And they were able to leapfrog us in many ways.
Understood. And the counterpoint to that, I don't want to just pick on China, right? We can talk about India and some other developing economies. In a lot of ways, they were able to leapfrog us because of what they didn't have, but also in a lot of ways, they're going to be continued to held back because of what they do have. Whether it's China or India, rules, regulations, red tape, corruption. There's a counterbalance there, right, Peter?
Michael, I know we've been sucking up a lot of your time, and I love this conversation. I could go on forever, but I do want to close this out with a very important topic, and Sri kind of referenced it, and that's AI. What's next for our industry? What is going to drive CPG and retail to use AI in an effective manner versus a largely ineffective manner? And which types of AI should brands and retailers be focused on to drive growth and success in the near to middle term?
I am not surprised by how much pushback I get in conferences, events, conversations with current clients, potential clients, and worst of all, with our peers, our expert peers in the industry, pushing back against AI and a disbelief that it's real and has an impact, or that it will have a major impact going forward. And I've spent the last year trying to unpack where that incredulity is coming from and where that pushback is coming from. And over the last couple of months, I landed on what I think is my good answer. They simply don't know what's actually happening behind the curtain already. They're not behind the scenes seeing how retailers, CPGs, brands, supply chain providers, logistics companies, and everything from product development to reverse logistics, how the companies along that value chain have already implemented rudimentary and yet to be matured AI solutions. That's the only answer I have for this disbelief and skepticism.
So what I hear you saying is they're using AI to replace the dreary, repetitive, operational kind of things that aren't really sexy, but they actually move the numbers. And most people are thinking generative AI as being the vision of what AI should be, and they're kind of missing the mark. Is that am I paraphrasing that to some degree? Or
yeah, I think you're spot on in one way and not quite in another way. I think to one degree, the way you phrase that is correct. I also think in another way, it's overly reductive because it's not just about eliminating the dreary, time consuming stuff that humans would rather not do, right? If that were the case, we would have already figured out how to use AI to pick cotton fields and clean toilets, right? And so, but on the other hand, you're right, a significant element is the reduction in repetitive tasks, which, you want to produce higher efficiency, right? We have a lot of great news in the U.S. economy, but over the last 5 or 6 years, per worker productivity has never been lower. Oops, that's a problem to deal with everywhere. Where I think for our industry, the real narrative about AI is it's being implemented at scale on what I call the two great enablers of our industry. Perfecting your supply chain, logistics, and fulfillment and operations, it's being implemented across the table there, right? So when you're looking at AI solutions that are producing better results for network planning and network optimization and, where to put your inventory, how to get more visibility inventory, right? And on the other side, perfecting your technology, IT, and data, right? Those are the two great enablers of our industry. They're the two great enablers of the people who succeed in our industry. And they are utilizing AI, not in an experimental way now at scale. I think part of the problem that you're referring to, Peter, is that people in the industry have one view of AI, which is the generative part of AI, right? AI has traditional uses, predictive and analytics, et cetera. But what they're seeing is, sometimes the wonky ad images or the bad video, and they're all saying this stuff will never replace human creativity and ingenuity. And now I agree with that, right? My relationship and the relationship I advocate for everyone is that the human AI collaborative experience will produce the best results. But people who are judging the impact that AI will have on retail and CPG and brands based on some crappy images are totally missing the picture.
All right, let me remind our audience you can find all of our content by going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com in the URL. And of course, if you think you or your company has thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com and maybe you could join us on the podcast like Mike just did. Don't forget to drop us a rating on cpgguys.com on the navigation bar up top because it tells Peter and me how we're doing. Are we having the right conversation with the right guest? To our LinkedIn followers, thank you, thank you, thank you. There's never enough thanks we can say. A happy holidays to all of you. Your clicks, likes, DMs, direct messages, meeting us at conferences, doing podcasts with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mike, thank you for making time coming back for episode 2 during the holiday season. We do appreciate it.
Honor's all mine. Happy holidays to you guys and everyone listening.
Peter, as we wrap it up, any big aha moment for you on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the importance that the creator economy is having around the world, and that if we think we can just stifle it by cutting off one provider, we're probably overestimating the power of that. M&A is going to be a really interesting time as brands kind of rationalize their portfolio. I'll just tell you, I'm really excited about a bunch of things here, Sri, and more tactically, I'll say, one, you and I are going to head to CES. Can't wait to interact with so many people at that event. We're going to be talking about the Cornell program. We're going to be hosting our kickoff party. We've got the breakfast with CVS on Wednesday over at Park MGM. And then you and I are going to meet up with Michael at NRF the following week in New York. And that's going to be a phenomenal event. I'm going to be emceeing a happy hour on Sunday evening with some of my fellow Omnicom companies. And then, of course, you and I are heading down to Florida for the FMI at the end of the month. So just a lot of action packed. As you would say, it's a power packed month, Sri. It's a power packed month.
Would you have it any other way, Peter?
Nope. This is the way we do it.
Thank you, Peter. That's a wrap of this episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.